Get back into the presentation. Alright, so I already showed you how to get the data. We just clicked on this link above here. And whenever you download data from an online source, you want to record when you did it. So I downloaded the data set originally that we're going to look at on January 5th, 2016 at around noon. So why do you think that's something you need to consider? Yep, definitely, because it could change. It actually has a disclaimer on their website that says the data is dynamic, which allows for additions, deletions, and other modifications at any time. And I think, oh, they update it every day, like Monday through Friday. So that's kind of crazy. And they also have some other stuff on here about how like the data is collected by people and is collected by a lot of different people. So even if an offense from earlier this week is entered in there, the details about that offense might change too. So it's not like you can just keep appending the stuff that just got entered in the last few days. All right, so then we want to inspect the data. And the questions that we're going to ask about it, does it have all the necessary information based on our question? Does it have instances of crime? Yes. Is it about Denver? Yes, we can tell that without even opening the file. But the time frame, we need to make sure that we have data from before and after marijuana legalization, which was November 2012. So to do that, we're going to jump into the data. Actually, let's open Jump, and then I'll show you how to import the data. Get these tips out of the way. All right, so the Jump window hopped up over here. So what we want is to open a data table. And then I'm just going to go into my downloads folder and look at crime2.csv. Can open that up. It's a big file, so it might take a couple minutes. Yeah, you can see it's 74 megs, and that's not a huge file in the grand scheme of things, but that's all text. So it's 74 megs of just text. Hopefully it's not going to crash my computer because QuickTime is also running. Yeah. Well.
So how similar is this program to, say, Excel?
This program's, the overall layout is similar to Excel because it's a spreadsheet program, but it's a lot more restrictive about what you can put in the columns. So basically the way that it wants you to lay out your data is that each column is a variable. So in this case with these data, it's going to be things like what the code for the identifier for the crime is, what the code for the crime is, what type of crime it is, where it happened, and things like that. And then each row is an observation. So in this case, each instance of a crime has its own row. So you know in Excel you can basically have like averages and stuff at the end of your rows. Like it doesn't want anything except the raw data in the rows and columns. And then it has automatic functions to calculate all the summary statistics and make graphs and things like that. All right. I will force quit it.
I do have it. I have it on a thumb drive.
The data?
Yeah.
I mean, the data's downloaded, it's just not.
Just
Yeah, it's just not opening, and I have a jump file with it, so we'll skip the import step just because it's not behaving right now.
It's pretty easy to import.
Yeah,
In fact, we could
it's
maybe
super
import all
easy.
of our football stuff if you want. In fact, I might have to do that.
All right, that's a jump file. All right, we don't want any tips right now, and we already have our file open. So like I said, every column is going to be a different variable. So here we've got incident ID.
Say variable. Okay, yeah. So variable would be different effects on the data, right?
Or different information about the data. So these first two columns are basically unique identifiers for the incident and the offense. So theoretically, you could have one incident that has more than one offense, because at a crime, you can have more than one charge. It also gives you the police codes for these things, extensions. It tells you what it is in words, which is nice. It also gives it a more general category. It tells you when it first occurred, when it last occurred, and what date it was reported. So when deciding which date to use, we're going to have to pick like which one of these 3 dates we're going to use for the analysis. It tells you the address where things happened. It tells you all of the geographic data. So this is the data that they use to build their maps about the crime data. It tells you what district it happened in, what precinct, and what neighborhood. Alright, so
Did you have to buy this data?
I did not have to buy this data. It was all free.
Free data.
Free data.
My favorite kind.
Uh-huh. So this is all put out by the city of Denver. I guess I must have bought it with my tax dollars to a certain extent, but yeah, exactly. So if we go back to the PowerPoint guy, so we inspected the data. Oh, I forgot the whole point of that was to look to see if the date ranges matched what we needed. So to do that, we can go to, I'm going to go by the reported date, just because that's basically something that is not really going to have a lot of error in it. So you can go to table and sort. And I'm going to tell it to sort by the report date. And it sorts all of the data based on report date. So then we can look over here and see that we have data from 2011. And it'll take forever to scroll through. But, oh, and the other thing that you should notice is that this is the original file that I had. And when I sorted it, it opened up a duplicate file. Why is this a good thing?
We have talked about it.
Yeah.
Oh, wants to like if you accidentally like mess up some stuff, you always refer to it.
Yep, so we've got the original file as our backup, and if we accidentally sort something wrong or get the data out of order, we have an original copy that we can go back to. And that's really important for what's called data integrity.
So
So
that's
now,
an advantage of using jump is that you
yep,
automatically you don't even have to think about backups because it does it.
yes, exactly. Jump, every time you do anything major to your data, Jump makes a copy of it. You just have to remember to save the copy. So anyway, we have data from 2011 up into 2016, so that takes care of the date ranges that we were looking for. So that's good.
One quick thing. What do you notice that's kind of unusual about the date? Oh, they all happened at once. Oh, well, that one did. But I mean, just look at the format. Oh, see how they put the year first, and then the month, and then the day? Why do you think they do that? So you could sort it, right? If you had the month, day, and year, and you tried to sort it, then all the Januaries would be together. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's why. So usually when you put a date on something, you always want to put the year first, the month, and then the date.
Yep, that's some good data formatting.
Yep.
One of the things that I've learned in other data science classes is that it's not always, so reported date seems like one single variable, but in reality it's a bunch of different variables because you've got the year, you've got the month, you've got the day, and you've got the time. So let's say you wanted to figure out, you wanted to do some analysis for all crimes that occurred in May across years. That's going to be really hard to do it with this data field, but there's ways that you can split this column into multiple columns for year and date and things like that, so that you can do those types of analyses. It's the same thing with data like BMI. If you just record the BMI, then you're losing height and weight data, but you can calculate BMI based on height and weight. So when you're recording data, it's good to record just the basics and don't record anything that you can calculate based on other data that you have. All right. Okay, now back to the PowerPoint. All right, so now that we know what's in the data file, we can refine our search question. We can use the assets that are in the data set. So maybe we could ask questions that we didn't think that we could ask. Like maybe I didn't realize there's going to be a neighborhood column, so now I can ask questions about specific neighborhoods. And in the realm of letting the fields inform my question, I also noticed that it has traffic and non-traffic as one of the distinctions. So I'm just going to ask, did traffic violations increase after marijuana legalization in Stapleton?
So yeah, did you just see how refined that question got?
Yeah, it's very
It's just a very
specific.
broad thing. Did legalized marijuana have any effect on crime? Now we're going in Colorado. Now we're at a specific thing. She's going to probably go into a specific
Mhm.
You refine the question so we can answer it.
Yep. So, yeah, so the other thing that you have to do is you have to clean up your data. This is actually a relatively clean data set, but one of the things that we need to do with it is make sure that all the fields are the correct data type. And I actually already did this in this file, but to make sure that the data type is correct, you can go up here, this arrow. Oh, no, sorry. You can right click and go into column info. So we have incident ID, it's a string of numbers, and the data type says character. So why wouldn't I want it to be numeric? They're numbers. Why is it a good idea to keep it as a character? I'll give you a hint. Are you going to be doing math on the incident ID? No. So you don't want to do math on the incident ID. It's basically just a label. So we're not going to treat it as a number. We're going to treat it as a word, basically.
You're going to see that a lot happen in bioinformatics. That genes are called basically numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And what you want to do is not keep it as a number. That's just your ID, basically. It's
Yeah.
the social security numbers for these different things.
Mm-hmm. And I did the same thing for the offense column, the offense code, the offense extension, because they're all listed as numbers, but we're not going to be doing math on them. These were already imported as characters because, they're words. Uh, First occurrence, it actually has, if you go under numeric and continuous, it has a date format already in there and it recognized that these are dates. So that's a really cool feature of JMP. And it did that for these two columns as well. These are characters, we kept it like that. These are actually numbers, so they were kept as numeric. We're not really going to use them in this analysis, but they're still numeric continuous variables. And then the same thing with district ID and precinct ID. We converted these to characters. And yeah, these are also labels because it's basically just saying if there's a 1, it's a crime. If there's a 0, it's traffic. So a traffic accident isn't necessarily a crime. All right, so the other thing that you can do when you're cleaning your data is remove the data that you don't need. There's a ton of different columns here that I'm not going to be using in the analysis that I want to do.
How many rows does this contain?
Oh, how many rows does this contain? An easy way to do that is just to get a summary, and I think it'll, no. Yeah, so if we do distribution of, well, I think if we pick any variable, it'll tell us. So yeah, total, there's 300,054,854 records. So that's how many crimes have been reported in Denver from 2011. The other thing to note about this data is that these are reported crimes. This information is coming from the police. The U.S. government does another survey called, I think it's like the crime victimization survey or something, and that's data that they get from people who, it's basically a survey sent to a subset of people that say, like, what type of crimes have been committed against you, whether you reported them to the police or not in the last year. So that's another way to measure crime in an area. It's just this data set was really nice for our purposes, so I went with this one. What else? Oh, yeah, so we were talking about getting rid of the data that we don't necessarily need. And for my specific, and this is okay to do because we have the original copy of the data. So we don't need to worry about things disappearing because the original is still going to be there for backup if we remove something that we actually end up needing in the end. All right, so to get the part of the data that we want, we're going to subset. So that's under the tables menu. We can tell it what rows we want. So we want all of the rows, but for specific columns. We're going to select the columns. Sorry, I haven't done this in JMP much, so I'm a little. I think maybe I had to select the columns beforehand. Sorry about that. All right, so basically all we want to keep these identifiers because they're important to know. And we also, oh, I guess there's a list over here. So then we want the reported date, not the ones in the middle though. Can't select multiples. We want the neighborhood ID. and whether or not it was a traffic crime or not. Okay. So now we're going to subset based on the selected columns. We want all rows, selected columns. Hit OK. It made me a new spreadsheet with just the information that I wanted, which is pretty neat.
So that was a lot easier than cutting and pasting.
Yeah. No cutting and pasting. It's great.
Casey's like, I wish we had that for the last thing.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Really cool program.
Yeah. And then, since my question is specifically about traffic violations, we can subset again to only include traffic violations, which is pretty neat as well. So let's see if I can remember how to do that subset. Oh, I remember how I did it. So if you go into table, sort, I'm going to sort by is traffic. Oops. And now all the ones that aren't traffic are on the top and the other ones are at the bottom. So when, oh, sorry, my screen capture software is popping up. So now I can go into here and find where it changes from 0 to 1. Interesting. This is what we get for dealing with such big data sets. Here, I'll just start here, and then we can pick the rows that we want. I'm sure there's a better way to do this in JUMP, but I just didn't figure it out necessarily. There's a way to subset based on variables. So I selected the rows that I wanted for the most part. We'll subset again. We want selected rows, all columns. And it opens up another spreadsheet with primarily just the traffic violations, although we do have some non-traffic just because I didn't grab it precisely enough. But anyway,
Every time she does something different, it makes a copy.
Yep, and
She's always got that.
yep, and I should be saving these copies as I'm going, but I've actually already done this analysis before, so I'm not going to save them again. All right. So we cleaned the data by getting rid of unnecessary stuff, and now we can explore the data and just use the graphing functions in JUMP to look for trends. So we're not doing any sort of statistical analysis right now. We just want to take a look at the data. All right, so to do that, one of the good ways is to just go to Analyze and hit Distribution. And you can say that you want to do it by reported date and put the incident ID in the Y column. And it's probably mad at me because I'm doing QuickTime. Alright, I'm going to shut off the movie briefly just so I can show you this, or the recording.